How's it going, everybody? I wanted to give everybody some quick updates. So I will be starting the Whiteboard Wednesday again today. I actually had completely forgotten about it up until this point. What's out of sight is out of mind kind of deal. So we will be starting that up again today, and my goal is to kind of give you guys a glimpse into what it is that I'm working on for CCDE prep and things like that. So hopefully you guys will find that useful and relevant to whatever it is that you're working on. So one of the things that I've been doing lately is I deployed a actually, before I do that, let me kind of pull this up. Yes, this should be the core. Yeah. So one of the things that I've been doing lately, I'll bring this over here just so you guys can see it. And this is the security. So one of the things that I've been doing lately is I was going through the exam blueprint for DE, and like I mentioned, I was going to start going through wireless, and I deployed a CAT 9800 and CAT 9800 wireless controller. I got it running, and I started to try to get an access point to join the controller. I couldn't get it to work. So I spent about a few hours over the course of a day trying to figure out what the problem was. I still didn't narrow it down yet, but it's one of those things where it's a work in progress. But I do have a 2504 wireless controller, and I know it's a bit dated, but for me it's a more or less, it still covers a lot of the technologies anyway that I want to cover. So it's just a matter of going through and making sure I have all my ducks in a row. So what I wanted to do was, while I'm waiting for the power supply to show up, because somehow I accidentally threw out the power supply, while I'm waiting for that power supply to show up, which it should be here in the next couple of days, I decided to move forward and focus on the parts of security that I wanted to dive into. And one of the things that I did was I'm going through perimeter security and intrusion prevention, working my way through how all this stuff works. So that's where this topology comes into play. So I had never actually demoed out clustering on ASA, whether it's spanned mode or if it's individual interface. So now I've done both. And my goal now is to focus on focus on getting through that piece of it so that I can further my studies in that way. So as I'm going through this, my goal has shifted a little bit, but still the main focus of it is to focus on what would benefit me, right? So I was looking at the firewall platforms, and I was like, okay, well, I've always wanted to get my NP in security. So by going through the material on the DE core list, I still have to go through, and I had to spend quite a bit of time going through security. So I was looking up the exam for the firepower exams, or securing networks with Cisco firewalls. So this exam right here, the 300-710. So securing networks with Cisco firewalls. So I was looking through that, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, I can do this. So what I did was, I've got the documentation here for firepower pulled up. So I'm going to be focusing mainly on the FMC way of doing it. So that means that I'll have to join firewalls to FMC and then go through all that, which is why on this topology here I have several FTD boxes. We'll start off with a single device, we'll do the routed mode, then we'll do one in bridged mode, so on and so forth. And then we'll move ourselves into high availability with routed, high availability with bridged, and all that stuff that goes with that. So we're going to have, like, this will be routed, this will be bridged, this will be HA with routed, HA bridged, so on and so forth, and understand the pieces to that. So my goal is to build kind of a hierarchy in a couple of locations to test things out, make sure that they're working the way we want them to, stuff like that. So as I was going through the development of that and understanding how it all works, I was like, okay, well, I need to cover VPNs as well. So as I was going through that, if we look back over here, let's look at this guy, and let's pull up, where did I have it? This one. So we see the core, and then if I bring over the CCI security blueprint, and then we also look at the let's go back here to bring this over real quick. If I go to the exams and I look at the lab exam and do exam topics, and I expand this stuff out, you get perimeter security and intrusion prevention. So I was like, okay, what do we have going on here? So we have ASA, FTD, and routed, transparent, single, multi-context, multi-instance. Some things won't be able to be demoed, like multi-instance. I don't have the Cisco, I don't have the FMC 90, I'm sorry, not the FMC, the 4000 or 9000 series platform to demo on. So there's going to be some things that will just be read up on how it works and how to do it. And as far as I know it, you're not going to see those platforms in the exam either based off the hardware. You're going to have physical equipment. You're going to have 5512, 5516. You'll have a couple of switches, 3650, 3850, and you'll have an access point in 1852 running 8.3 code. So simply based off of reading the physical equipment you're going to have, and then you go back over here to the exam topics, you're not going to get tested on this because it's only supported on certain platforms, right? So just by knowing platform, their capabilities, and then the topics on the exam, you'll know what they can actually test you on. Can they test you on all this other stuff? Sure. Which is one of the reasons why I'm going to go spend the time to go through that. So, firewall features on here. So we're going to do NAT, traffic inspection, traffic zones, PBR, redirection to service modules, identity firewall. And then I got down here to iOS and iOS XE, and it was like application awareness, zone-based firewall, NAT. I'm like, okay. So nothing that you wouldn't normally see. And then you have clustering and high availability on these guys. So basically all the same things that you would see before. And you get down here to VPNs, and then you see secure connectivity and segmentation. You see that they've got Flex VPN, DMVPN, IPsec, LAN-to-LAN tunnels, AnyConnect-based VPNs on. So what's funny is if you look, Cisco AnyConnect client-based remote access VPNs on ASA, Cisco FTD, and Cisco routers. So if you guys didn't know that a router could also be a remote access VPN termination point, ta-da! Guess what? That's something we're going to have to demo. So it also talks about Flex VPN, iOS router certificate authority. And ASA can be a certificate authority as well, but I've never used it in that capacity, so I'll probably do that just to see what it looks like. Flex VPN, so like version 2, DMVPN, and LAN-to-LAN tunnels. VPN high availability methods. ASA VPN clustering, which is interesting since I just went through clustering and I read what you can't do with it. You can't do remote access, but you can do site-to-site VPN. So dual hub DMVPN deployments. And then infrastructure segmentation, VLAN per VLAN, GRE, VRF Lite. And then we'll need Cisco ICE to do this. Security infrastructure. So there's obviously quite a bit that we're going to have to go through on this, and which actually is funny because if you go back over here to the core technologies list, there's a lot of overlap between wireless and the security section, which is one of the reasons why I started with it first, because I know it the least, and it would give me time to go through that. So going back to my original point that I was trying to make at the very beginning of the video, is that as I start going through the technology list on the core and I start correlating that to like CCNPs and things like that, I'm like, okay, well, that would help me knock out the firewall exam. That would help me knock out the ICE exam. I've already done VPN a long time ago, so it wouldn't take very much to go recertify in that area and re-up that one. And then, not mentioned here specifically, but there is there's two other. They do have wired and wireless network access control, which is specifically like 802.1x and things like that. So as I'm looking through the security exams, the security exam topics, going through all the capabilities that are out here, and then talking about identity management and how all that type of stuff works, and then advanced threat protection and how that would come into play. You have ESA and WSA. Well, if you notice here, there's no reference to email or web appliances security for that. So I'm like, okay, well, even though they're not called out, they are still concentration exams on the CCIE security. So what I would do is, after I've gone through, and VPN is up here in case anybody was wondering. They do have quite a bit of coverage on VPN. So as I was looking at my topology here, let me go ahead and just minimize this guy. As I was looking at my topology here, I'm going to have ASA, and the ASA platform that I'm working off of, we pull this up real quick, just so you guys can see what I'm referring to. I think it's this guy here. I was doing some demos on this. Now this is spanned ether channel, spanned mode, so I'm doing port channels on this ASA. If I do a show ver, this is a virtualized ASA 5520, and it's got all the licensing you could possibly ask for. So you can do, it does support multiple contexts, right? So security context is 20. You can do any 10,000 premium peers. It does have all the licensing for everything you might need. So what I'm planning on doing is using this ASA, and if you look and come in here and do the DIR, it's already got AnyConnect ready to go 4.5. So it's like comes preloaded with all the cool stuff that you need. And so this stuff is available online. Google Food did take over for this. I was able to find it. So that is something that I will be using for that capability. Now, I do have a pair of 5520s in my basement, and I will, there are some, there might be some specific capabilities that aren't supported. But at the end of the day, I'm not too concerned about that. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be building out a lab for ASA, ASAV, to test out those capabilities, FTD, iOS, and iOS XE. So I'm going to have 4 different platforms in this topology, and my goal is to have to cover all the different, it's going to be firewall capabilities and VPN capabilities in one topology, so that I'll be able to test a bunch of different things out. And it's supposed to, I want to have a real world aspect of it. What that means is that I'll have internet connectivity, so we'll be doing the internet setup, so IGP, then doing BGP, and then we're going to be adding security for all of those things. So that my goal is to do compound it, so you have a bottom up approach. So we start off with IGP, then BGP. We get all the routing out. We do an MPLS VPN so that we can test out Get VPN and anything over like dual cloud. So we go beyond what the blueprint specifically tells us, but we also have the capability of testing out a lot of other capabilities as well. I will be doing remote access VPNs and stuff like that. I will be using beefier CSR 1000Vs because I want to be able to test out internet capability. So for specifically speaking, if we let me grab this guy real quick. There is a model here. Let me go ahead and find it real quick. 17, I think 17.3. Yeah, I think it's this guy. Let me go ahead and copy him over to here. And I have a lot of other stuff that I'm going to be testing out as well. But so for example, I will grab the node, we'll come down here to the CSR, and then we'll drop down. We have 17.3. So I'll just put in here it's iNet, all caps, and we'll do, we'll say 6 of these devices, and we'll grab like 8 interfaces. So let me go save that. So what I want to do is I want to talk a little bit about how this would kind of work together. And I know the one thing I want to be aware of is if I right click on here and I go to edit, we're talking 1 CPU. So it's going to take a lot for this to boot because it is a beefier platform. But the FTDs themselves take 4 CPUs and 8 gigs of RAM. I have the Firepower Management Center running as a virtual machine on my ESXi host. So I'm trying to take as many things, that and ICE are running on my ESXi host. And then any connectivity that will go into this Eve instance will be, that isn't going to be an Eve node, will be a virtual machine running. So for example here, I'm going to start this guy up, and I'll grab this guy right here. That'll be fine. So he'll boot up. What I want you guys to see, and I don't know how long it's going to take, I'll pause the video if I have to, but there's a assist log message or something like that, it's like one of these guys right here. It pops up and it tells you what the throughput is, and I think it's 10 megabit, and that's really important for what we're trying to do, because on the CSR 1000V, the lighter versions of it, like the 3.x version, you were limited to do 100 kilobits per second, which kind of hampered any testing you wanted to do. So with the higher platforms, I know 16.6 and higher, it could be even a lower version of that, but I know 16.6 and later versions supported 1 megabit of throughput. And the reason why I bring that up is because I plan on having some home users sitting here to where we're gonna put a router at home so we can test out, NAT on the router, and then we're gonna be because that's kind of a big deal too, NAT and zone-based firewall and things like that. So my goal here is with this topology is to test out firewalling capabilities, VPN capabilities, advanced firewall stuff that you normally wouldn't see, or you may see in the real world, stuff like that, so that we can test those things out. And that's going to cover quite a bit of the blueprint. So if we go jump back over here real quick, my goal here is to test out a lot of the infrastructure security. I do radius and TACACS as well, so we'll have hooks into the routers so we can authenticate via ICE. And I do plan on doing Active Directory integration, so I'll deploy a Windows server as well, and we'll have to log into the Windows server, set up Active Directory, all that type of stuff. So it's going to be an involved lab, and I'm actually really looking forward to this because I'll be able to test out a lot of different things. NAT, application inspection, PBR. It doesn't specifically call out in here zone-based firewall, but it does without saying it. It says traffic zones, which would automatically mean to me zone-based firewall. And if we go back over here, it talks about that when you look at the firewall capabilities. They talk about zone-based firewall right here. So we're going to have to test those things out and what their capabilities are, and see what I can do about remote access VPN and deploying AnyConnect on the router. So like I said, I plan on going through a deep dive in firewall, a deep dive in VPN, kind of a lightweight version of this on on iOS, not iOS. Doing IGP, BGP, doing a lightweight version of that where we focus more on the security topics. So there's a lot that goes into that, and I'm waiting for the pop-up to come through where it tells you what the throughput is. So that might take a couple more minutes. But the cool thing about it is when you're doing all these things, and you have the right platform to do it on, it gives you a lot of flexibility that you normally wouldn't. So terminate auto install. So I plan on using a couple of heavier boxes for internet connectivity and things like that, and we'll test out hey, how do you connect to a cloud, things like that. So my goal is to come up with a topology in a lab. Let's see where this thing pops up here. So normally it tells me what the throughput is. I'll wait till it's done before I start going through this. But if you have the capability of doing these things, I highly recommend it because it's definitely a solid thing for you to test out. Yeah, it's still has to finish booting up, but that'll cover a lot of the where is it? That's going to cover a lot of the core technologies as well as security exam topics, and that's my goal, is to cover basically perimeter security and intrusion prevention. I'll be deploying IPS. Now, there's an interesting thing about this, and with the NG IPS, you can deploy the IPS itself and join it to the FMC. But from what I've been reading up on, in order for you to take advantage of the IPS capabilities, you need to have a specific license for that. I could be wrong, but based off what I've read, there's some of that. So what my goal is to do is test out perimeter security and intrusion prevention, this entire section. I'm going to be going through and diving into, and then doing secure connectivity and segmentation, this entire section, minus the TrustSec for at least the beginning. Once I have everything stood up, then we'll add in TrustSec using SFT. I don't know what that is. SXP is like the bypass protocol, if I remember correctly. And then security infrastructure, we'll definitely be going through all of this as well, where it makes sense. And then then you have identity management. This will be its own dedicated section because I'll obviously need ICE to do all of this stuff and see exactly what that's going to look like. And then PX grid with all that stuff that goes with it. And then advanced threat protection. This stuff will have to go into more detail. I don't know how much of this I'll be able to demo. But that's going to cover, just by going through this section here, all of this, infrastructure security, then deep packet inspection, data plane protection, perimeter and intrusion prevention, and then network control and identity management, and then the wireless piece. That covers, you're basically covering two different exams at the exact same time. And then you just have to add in for, where was it? It was over here. Exams and training, right here. So it's this one right here. So I'm looking at security networks with Cisco firewalls. Then you have the ICE exam. Then you have email and web security. And then you have VPN. So I've already pretty much done this one. So this one just be a matter of retaking it to update it. Then this exam, and then ICE, ESA, WSA. By going through that, I'm already covering 1, 2, 3. 3 out of the 5 concentration exams, and then I just had to take the security core. So I would, and there's training online available for ESA and WSA. How hard that would be to implement and add it to this existing topology, I don't know. I don't expect it to be very much, but that would cover basically the entire blueprint for CCA security. And what's cool about that, it also, because of the core technologies list and going through CCA security, the exam topics, when you get to things like right here, when you get into wireless security and things like that, you're covering a good chunk of the wireless track as well. So I would go get my CCNP and security. I'd go get my, and I know you don't need all the concentration exams in order to do that. You really only need the core and one concentration. But because I'm going that direction, I probably would end up tackling at least 1 or 2, if not 3, CCIEs after this, because you've already gone so far down the exam track because of the topics you've covered. It really wouldn't be that much of a stretch. So that's kind of where I'm going with it right now. So let's see if we can't find this thing real quick. There was a throughput, I believe, up here. see if I can't find it real quick. Normally it pops out and it's just like device throughput set to something. Nothing there. Oh, right here. So throughput level has been set to 1,000 kilobits, so you get a megabit of throughput, which is going to help because when you've got for example, a Windows VM, a Windows 10 VM running here, and you have it connected to the router, or you got it, a firewall in front of it, or a router in front of it doing the NAT, and then you want to connect into an ASA and be able to run AnyConnect on it, and then connect to a server or a PC behind the scenes. I want to be able to demo all of those things out, and it's going to be really hard to do when you're running a lighter weight platform where you only support 100 kilobits per second. So having a megabit of throughput will definitely improve the user experience. So, and you might be wondering, okay, how do you plan on covering all this? All these things that I'm talking about covering will eventually become labs on robrakerstechchannel.com. So if you don't know already, there's a website that I have. There will be a link in the description to access that. As I'm going through these labs and I have figured out the topology that I want to work out on yet, that'll be coming soon. I'm going to actually blow these two away and I'm going to rebuild them because I want to test them out again. So that I have to go back and read the documentation on them so I have a better understanding. And that's part of the design aspect, is understanding how that comes into play. Because are there capabilities that I haven't tested out yet? There are. Do I think that the security exam is going to make me do some sort of weird wizardry where in individual interface mode, where I would have to do a PBR on the router to point to a specific ASA? You never know. They might. That's why they call it, that's why you have to test all these different variables out and make sure you understand them. So it's an involved process, but as I'm going through this and I'm realizing how much overlap there is between the DE core and then the large scale networking, it's setting you up for success for security, wireless, and service provider. So that's the direction I plan on going down the road, and eventually tackling those CCIEs down the road. Obviously, getting my service provider would probably be the easiest, but because I'm the furthest along with that one. But and going back over here, we look at, I think it's over on this page, or not on that one. But if I go over here and I look at large scale networking, so there's a large topic in here that goes into service provider specific stuff. And if I go to service provider version 5, but I also look at the core list, if I look at the core list for network virtualization, they talk about MPLS and BGP control planes. Okay, cool. Label distribution protocols with LDP, RSVP, and BGP plus label, and then segment routing. Now, it doesn't go into anything specific with segment routing, where in large-scale networking, they do. If you come down here to segment routing, why is that not zooming in? You see right here where it says SRv6, LDP, and SR interworking, and then see traffic engineering with TLFA, on-demand next hop, and then flexible algorithm. I still don't know what AS is. That's one I have to figure out. What all that means to me is that if I go through the core, I can deploy a sizable, it would be 1, 2, so this would be 2 different service providers. 3, actually. They don't have to be terribly big when it comes to MPLS deployments. You could have 3 different service provider networks, each with like 8 routers in it, and there's going to be LDP, RSVP, and BGP plus label. So I would do, just to understand the differences between the different technologies, you got three different variations: LDP and RSVP typically work together. Then you have BGP plus label, so IPv4 labeled unicast, and then you have segment routing. So I would have three different service providers. I would connect them together to do inter-AS multicast or MPLS, but at the same point in time, I would also add in, I'd have them all separate, but all interconnected at the same point in time. So there's a lot that goes into this, and then you would run your tunneling techniques on top of that: layer 3 VPN, layer 2 VPN, so on and so forth. So there's a lot to go into, but what that does for me is it gives me a platform where I can take this topology and I can grow it. Like, okay, we've covered internet connectivity and things like that. Now I can start adding in the different service providers like MPLS, BGP plus labeled unicast, and then segment routing, and then start to grow it out, and then focus on IGP and stuff like that, where it's like lower level IGP, meaning like CCNA type stuff. That's kind of my game plan. Because if you go back over here, I know I'm jumping back and forth a lot, but if you look here, when you get into IGPs, you're looking at unicast routing protocols. It's all of them. We're going to be diving into each one of them. So if we keep it really simple early on with IGP and do a little bit with with the security emphasis in the beginning, just do basic IGP, OSPF, EIGRP, RIP, ISIS, OSPF in their respective areas. And one of the other things, initially when we go through and do that, simple deployments. Set up a basic OSPF area 0 deployment, basic EIGRP, basic RIP, basic BGP. CCNA level, maybe starting to dive into the CCNP in some areas, but then we'll add in authentication. To authenticate all the routing protocols and see what that looks like, and get that all working. But as we get down into VXLAN, Lisp, and multi-protocol BGP, that'll be its own dedicated. We'll start up as a single data center, and then we'll grow that to multiple data centers that are acting like colos and getting all that stuff together. So as you go through, and even though I'm going to be doing the blueprint kind of out of order, it's gonna eventually bring itself all back together again, and you'll see how it all glues together. So there's a lot that goes into it, but if you understand the core capability, then you'll be in a really good spot once you get further on down the road and everything starts to make sense. So I was talking to a buddy of mine the other day, and one of the things that he mentioned was that the DE core and then the large scale networking, he's like, it's a lot. And it is. And if you don't have a deep technical understanding of how all this stuff works, then you're going to struggle with that. And so one of the other questions I got was, do I think I need to lab every one of these technologies up? Because I've read a lot of posts online about CCDE prep, and they're like, all of them were, I read chapters 2 through 12 in this book. And then I had an understanding of what I needed to do, and I was able to go crack the DE practical. Great. I'm happy for you. Your approach and my approach are a little bit different. Am I taking it further than I need to? Probably. But I'd rather have that low-level understanding before I go sit for a design exam, because that to me is what's necessary. And if you don't feel like that's needed, that's cool. We can agree to disagree on to what level you need to test things out on. Are there things that I don't know? 100%. There's a lot of stuff in here that I don't know. I mean, I have a general idea of what that means just by reading the blueprint. But at the end of the day, my job is to take what I don't know and dive into it. And that's exactly what I'm doing by looking at building out topologies like this that'll help me go through that process. And the more technologies that I can overlay on top of each other and understanding their interdependencies is going to be huge. Because whether you plan on getting multiple CCIEs or CCIEs period, that's up to you completely, right? My goal here is to test out what works, have it, document it inside of Microsoft OneNote, and then I will take all the known good configurations that are going through, and I'm going to be building out labs on the website. And that'll continue to go over and over and over again until I'm covered the entire blueprint. And then my goal is to have, as I'm going through specific security areas, if the emphasis is on security, it'll be a security specific lab. If it's more service provider, then it'll be more specific to service provider. If it's enterprise, it'll be specific to under the enterprise, and so on and so forth. Or data center, when I get into VXLAN and Lisp and how that comes into play. So there really is no wrong way to approach this stuff. It's just a matter of get a game plan, understand what you need to do, and then go execute on it. That's really what it comes down to. So now that I've been going through this, and it gave me some ideas as I was going through. And my main thing has always been and always will be, if I am covering a large topic scope and there's a lot of overlap in other areas, why wouldn't I go tackle the CCIE for security or for service provider or for wireless? If I'm already taking it this far and I only need to go this much further, why not, right? Yeah, it's always been a dream of mine to be a multi-time CCIE. Would I really get a benefit from it financially through my current job? No, I probably wouldn't, and that's not the goal. My goal is to, and I mentioned this before I got back from Cisco Live, was to broaden my technical capability. So that means I want to dig deeper into security, wireless, even do some collaboration. That'll come down the road more. Every one of the areas of expertise on the CCDE, large scale networking service provider specifically. Then you got cloud and data center, on-prem and cloud data center. So obviously data center. And then you've got workforce mobility with wireless. So if I'm going to dig into those areas, I'm going to take advantage of the certification as well, because I've put the time and effort in to learn it. I might as well show through that where I'm credible. And I think that's where the really big benefit comes into play. So I have some stuff that I'm going to be going through. I have a topology in my mind that I'm going to be building out for this. And as time goes on, I will be bringing you guys in on how that's going to come into play. It's going to be on the big side, but the cool thing about it is it's going to give me some flexibility in how to demo the stuff out. So I will show you guys how I'm setting up some of my labs. Hopefully you guys can take advantage of it. They're going to be on the larger side on purpose because it's a learning tool, right? I'm testing out multiple different firewall capabilities on both iOS and iOS XE. Some things will work on iOS that won't work on iOS XE and vice versa. So again, it's just one of those things where you have to take your time, build it out correctly. You have to understand what's going on, and the topology might drift a little bit. There might be some modifications, additions, some subtractions, depending on where I'm at in my learning. I feel like I have a pretty solid understanding of how some of the stuff works. But as time goes on, I will have to make some adjustments. Do I plan on adding in any Fortinet or Palo or Checkpoint or any other firewall platforms? As of right now, no. But I might add in some Palo and maybe one Fortinet box. But right now, it's going to be mainly Cisco platforms because that's what the exams I'm going after are going to test on. So I'll have to look at, I probably should upgrade my Palo cert. So I might add in a Palo or two just for good measure, just to cover the base. And then I would have a dedicated Palo section, and same thing with Fortinet, a couple Fortinet boxes. So, but Fortinet will come down the line because of the fact that Fortinet only gives you a 2-week license. So Fortinet will come down the road. Anyway, that's kind of what I wanted to cover with you guys. If there's any questions you guys have at any point in time, feel free to leave a comment in the comment section below. There is a lot that goes into this, and I want to do the heavy lifting for you, figure out what's going to work, and then put out some videos here and there, and then the bulk of that stuff will go out to the website So if you want to keep up to date with what is going on, check out the website on a regular basis. $25 a month, all access pass for anything that is more paid content. So if you guys are interested in that, let me know. But other than that, I want to thank you guys for stopping by and hanging out with me. I'll catch all of you guys in the next video.